Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first personal webinar, My Wellbeing, How to Identify It and Use Your Strengths. So first of all, thank you so much, everyone, for taking time out of your day and joining us. We really appreciate having you here, and we're really excited because we have a great lineup of panel, and we're really excited to hear what you have to share later. Um, so sit back, relax, have a cup of tea or snacks if you like, and just enjoy this session. Right. So before we begin this session, I'd just like to highlight a few housekeeping items. First of all, we aim to finish this session by 9:30 p.m. And the last portion of our session will be dedicated to Q&As. So if you do have any questions along the way, or if you want to share your own experiences, or if you have any thoughts about our topic today, please write it down somewhere and save it for the last bit of our session. And lastly, please do keep your mics muted unless you are speaking, but feel free to keep your videos on throughout this session if you like. We'd love to see your faces as well. uh, so let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Rachel. I'm part of the organizing committee of My Mind on Film, and I will be your MC for today. All right. Good evening. So to give you a little overview about My Mind on Film, My Mind on Film is a Malaysian film festival targeting youth and young adults, and in hopes to inspire sharing of perspective, ideas, and to recognize that mental health is universal, it's changeable, and it also includes the positive as well. And of course, we hope to break the stigmas that surround mental health and well-being. This project is central to the Center of Mental Health and Wellbeing's commitment to engage with young people and hopefully to work with them towards the progress of our objectives. Um, and you will find details about this project on our social media pages or our website, which you will find in the chat now. And you'll find resources such as our guidelines for filmmakers who are interested in our ongoing film competition or our safeguarding policies regarding this project. Right. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest panels for today. First of all, we have Professor Emeritus Mazlan Othman. She is currently the Director of the International Science Council Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific since 2017. She's marked many notable accomplishments in the field of science, especially in astrophysics, and one of which was heading the National Angkasawan program, which saw the launch of the first Malaysian to the International Space Station in 2007, and that's really amazing. And she's currently co-chairing the ASM Malaysia Foresight 2050 initiative. And next we have Jeremy Tan. So Jeremy was previously a senior consultant advising the Ministry of Finance on matters related to strategy and finance. But he's currently the senior manager for the Group Strategy Department for UMW. He's also currently the outgoing curator for Global Shapers Kuala Lumpur and the project lead for Heads Up, which is another mental health wellbeing project, right? So if you have time, do check it out as well. And hopefully Jeremy will be able to share more of it as well later. Uh, Next, we also have Melisha Lin. Melisha is actually a student currently majoring in marketing management in Segi University. She's also a freelance host and a model, and she has won the title of the Global Asian Model Malaysia 2019. She is the service director of Rotaract Club of Bukit Bintang, and she is also the ambassador of You Are Not Alone Southeast Asia Mental Health Initiative, which started at the beginning of the global pandemic. Right, so that's really interesting areas that all our speakers are delving into. And of course, last but not least, we have Dr. Eugene, who is our one of the associate professors and research coordinators at the Department of Psychology in Help University, and he specializes particularly in the field of emotions, emotional intelligence, and positive psychology. Dr. Eugene is also a regular speaker on BFM, Malaysia's only independent radio station, and he's also the author of 3 books, right? And in fact, we have the privilege to hear a little bit from Dr. Eugene later because he'll be sharing a little more about what the character strengths are, and he will also be our host for the panel discussion taking place next. So, Dr. Eugene, the floor is yours. You can take it away.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here this lovely evening. My apologies if it's a little bit too dark in my background. The lights in my room have just decided to go out all of a sudden, but I hope that you're all warm, cozy, you have a nice cup of tea. I see a couple of you having drinks with you, so whatever makes you comfortable, just hang on to it and just kick back, relax, because tonight's session is about mental health. It's about character strengths. It's about psychology from a very positive and very empowering, I feel, perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, the esteemed panel of guests have been introduced to you. So let's dive right in. What I'd like to do first and foremost is to share a couple of slides just to, put a bit of context to what we'll be discussing tonight. So I'm going to click share screen. And you probably see just popping up shortly character strengths. So I'm just going to go full screen on this one. Full screen from the beginning. There we go. Okay, so this is really the essence of our conversation, and we're going to be asking our panel guests a couple of interesting questions about strengths. And really, this comes from the position of asking, what's right with you? What's good with you? What strengths do you have that make you a unique individual? We are too often, I feel, reminded of our limitations, our weaknesses, our bad habits, and we think that a reminder of, what these limitations, weaknesses, and bad habits are is a pathway for growth and improvement. I think many a times our performance evaluations, when someone gives us advice or constructive criticism, they'll say, hey, you need to be working on a couple of aspects of your behaviors, the way you think, maybe get a little bit more of a handle on your emotions, stuff like that. But self-improvement and growth, when we want to flourish and thrive as individuals, I think that also requires us to recognize that we are unique individuals with certain unique strengths, character strengths that are specific to you and you alone. Here's a definition. This is about as academic as I'm going to get tonight. A strength is a capacity for feeling, thinking, behaving in a way that allows optimal functioning in the pursuit of valued outcomes. So what's good? What's right? What's virtuous about yourself? Have you asked yourself these questions? Because acknowledging your strengths does increase feelings of authenticity, that you are uniquely yourself as an individual. You're able to express yourself in ways that benefit yourself and those around you. Have you asked yourself this question? Right. So just to get you guys thinking a little bit about our conversation here tonight, what happens when you start instead in your path to growth, improvement, flourishing, thriving, by looking at what is right and what is good about yourself? I invite you, ladies and gentlemen, to head over to this website here, www.viacharacter.org. You can go ahead and, Rachel, if you could assist by maybe just typing that out in the meeting chat. Sign up on the website. It's a free account. You sign up for it for free. And at your own time, what we'll like you to do is invite you to go ahead and take that survey. It takes maybe about 20, 30 minutes. And by the end of it, it'll generate a personalized report detailing your character strengths. All right. But without needing to take the survey, I'm going to get you guys to guess and maybe think about what strengths that you have. On my second and the only other slide that I have for you guys here tonight, here's a list of all the character strengths. And this is based on the survey, which I'm inviting all of you to go and take later on. It's called the Values in Action Classification of Strengths, and it's the work of psychologists Chris Peterson and Martin Seligman. Perhaps some of you recognize yourselves as having strengths in wisdom and creativity. You love learning. You exercise good judgment. You're naturally curious individuals. Or maybe there's a lot of you out there who recognize strengths. Your strengths come from being honest, being brave, being courageous. So this is a cluster of strengths that we recognize as courage. How about strengths related to humanity? And these are in no sense weaker strengths or mushy, touchy-feely strengths. The ability to be kind, to be empathetic, to be compassionate to others. These are all strengths that also define you, define us as human beings. As a cluster of strengths that relates to what the researchers call justice. So if you recognize yourself as having strengths in leadership, teamwork, ability to exercise and recognize fairness, these are all characteristics of strengths classified under justice. Find yourself as someone who is able to regulate their own emotions, someone who exercises prudence, humble in your achievements and accomplishments, then your strengths fall under the temperance category. right? And the last cluster of strengths here relates to what we call transcendence. So someone with an appreciation for beauty, and beauty does not necessarily just mean physical beauty, but also moral beauty, right? Moral excellence. People who are naturally kind and grateful, people who are hopeful, people who have a great sense of humor, people who have rich, very interesting, deep spiritual lives that help them connect themselves with greater meaning. That can also be a strength. All right, folks, now that you have, I've hopefully piqued your interest on strengths, we're going to turn our attention right now to our guest panel. We've actually done the VIA survey, and we're just going to ask them what their strengths are, and we'll see what they've learned from these strengths. So let's see. At the start, I picked out that Mel was the most enthusiastic one of the lot. So let's start with you, Mel. And if you could just dive right in. Mel, share with us, you've you've taken the survey. What are your top 3 strengths and how have they helped you with your goals?
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Eugene. So, my top 3 strengths are actually perspective, social intelligence, and leadership, which I thought like it feeds Malaysia in general. Like when people look at me, they will think like, hey, the character strength that I have actually matches. That's why I was so enthusiastic in sharing the survey that I had. And how do I think that it has served me? I would say that because of my social intelligence, I always feel like I understand people. I can always relate to them. So it really helps me in terms of my studying, or because I work since the age of 17, very young age. I do know very young age, but because of that, it really helps me to grow as an individual really quickly. You see, I can understand how what my boss wants. I can understand what my coworker wants, and I do understand what I want in general because of all these qualities that I have. And I have natural leadership skills, which really
Mm,
helps me as well.
mm.
I'm the eldest in the family, so that actually makes sense in general. It really helps in pushing me forward in life.
Mm. You mentioned social intelligence. You also mentioned the ability to, have good perspectives and being able to place yourself in another person's view of things. So you're saying that this has helped you along, and certainly we can see from your accomplishments as well that you have lots to show because of your reliance on these strengths.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much, Mel. And let's hop on over to Jeremy because Jeremy also looks like he's raring to go to share his strengths, somewhat academic strengths using Jeremy, but over to you.
Yeah. Hey guys. Thanks for the invite to come for the session itself. So I think like before we started, we talked about our strengths itself, and I think this while I was doing this survey itself, kind of shocked me for the result because my top 3 strengths were actually leadership, honesty, and kindness. I thought it would skew towards a little more of academic, a little bit more for corporate, but then having a little bit of introspection, I then think back of how do I use the strength to practice in my corporate world. I think more often than not, we left the old school corporate world where, you just got to you just got to be hardworking. You just got to constantly whip the lash as well. And I think right now the corporate world has just shifted, so it requires a lot of honesty and kindness. It's no longer about people just getting salary and coming to do your job and then you move back. It's about human being. It's about human interaction. It's about empathy as well. And I thought it was quite good that I actually achieved this because it was something that to put in perspective, it was something that was not taught in school because you were always taught with the hard skills. You always thought you just got to work hard and long enough and you'll rise your corporate ladder, right? Yeah, but things have certainly changed, and I'm quite happy that I adapt to it. So
Excellent. Jeremy, I'm really fascinated because when you mention kindness as a strength and then leadership also as a strength, you mentioned, you're also mentioning just a while ago about how competitive the corporate environment is. How do you think being a kind leader is beneficial to you and to those around you?
yeah, I think it stems from growth mindset.
Mm,
So I think in this very dynamic economic that we are in right now, I think things are, there's much more opportunities than we had maybe 20, 30 years back, maybe even my parents' time, right? So I think in our generation, when we start approaching things, it's more about win-win situation. I think there's more than enough pies for everyone here to eat, right? It's no longer a single pie where I think there's about 104 of us just got to vie for it, right? So there's different pie for different people at different situation. So I think a little kindness goes along the way, because I always believe that the world is round. So who you help today might be someone who will be your ally and help you back in the future. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Jeremy. I instantly think that the pie should be expanded rather than us all clamoring to get a piece and a slice of it. So, yep, bright future, kind leader, right? And God knows the world needs a whole lot more of that. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And let's turn our attention now to Dr. Mazlan, who's also looking. Oh, there we go. She looks really keen to start sharing her results. So, Dr. Mazlan, over to you. Your top strengths and how it's helped you along the way. Dr. Mazlan, you have to unmute. Yep, just go ahead and unmute.
Do this. Okay.
There we go. There, we can hear you now. All right.
Myself. Okay, quite interesting what I've been listening to. Okay, now I had a discussion with Mark about this because the results were quite surprising. Now, why? Because I'm a lot older than all of you here, I think, very much older. And so what I've discovered is that this is a snapshot of me right now in terms of my strengths. And then I'll tell you why, because I'm going to tell you what the strengths are, which I think this don't quite describe me when I was hungry, when I was taking all those risks, seeking all those risks for my career. Why? Because my number one strength is spirituality, followed by creativity, followed by fairness, curiosity, and then appreciation of beauty and excellence. Actually, all five of them, I was telling Mark, describe me now. But actually, in trying to establish, you know my CV, all those things I did, these were not the real strengths that I had, because I will say that if I had to describe myself when I was young, number one would be my zest, my perseverance, and then my perspective and leadership. But I had to have lots of energy, and this right now maybe I have less of that energy, and then I'm like being spiritual. And Eugene, I was reading to Mark what it means to be spiritual, having coherent beliefs about the higher purpose and, listen to this, meaning of the universe. Well, that's me, isn't that? And then it says, knowing where one fits within the larger scheme, having beliefs about the meaning of life that can shape conduct and provide comfort. Yeah, that's me right now. But I just, the caveat that I have is, if I'm going to be telling you how I overcame the challenges, the one thing that I will say is that I didn't overcome challenges. I looked for challenges. I was what is that word? When somebody did this analysis on me, I am a risk seeker. I'm not even a taker. So I'm very high in that risk spectrum, and top 10% in the world in terms of a risk seeker. That's why they call it the risk seeking group, that you're looking for things. So that was where I was when I was setting up the space program, doing things for the United Nations. Yeah.
It's incredibly inspiring, Dr. Mazlan.
I don't know what to say. What do you want me to, if I say in Melayu, nak kupas, what do you want me to
peel.
Peel. Unravel, reveal.
I was younger like you guys right now, or when I'm now
Still young,
Zen.
Dr. Mazlan. Dr. Mazlan, I think it's amazing that one of your top strengths is spirituality, and along with it as well, an appreciation of beauty and excellence, because some recent psychological research has told us of, this experience of seeing the of seeing the heavens, and you certainly have peered into, looked into, what the heavens look like. So
I
this
have
is a
seen
very,
the heaven.
it is an awe-inspiring experience, and only very few people are fortunate enough to have actually experienced that.
I feel grateful and I am humble because of that. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And, I picked up another theme from our conversation here as well, that I think all three of our esteemed guests said that they were surprised by their findings. So I think the one takeaway I can get from this discussion so far is that you never know, isn't it? You might have looked at the VIA, the list of strengths, and you think, yeah, that's my strength. But when you take it, something else emerges. And so I think it's also interesting that we have that realization, because it feeds into this idea of continued exploration, understanding of ourselves, and recognition of our individual strengths. Okay, we're off to a great start. I'm just a little bit mindful of time here. We could go on for the entire night, but I'm just going to jump to the, yes, Dr. Mazlan?
No, I'm just saying, I'm just agreeing.
Okay, great. So let's move on to the next question. And again, as really accomplished individuals in your respective professions, a range of different experiences, wide range of different experiences across different industries. My next question to you all is, what are some of the biggest, perhaps most memorable challenges that you faced on the road to success? And maybe tie that in to your strengths, the strengths that you mentioned just a while ago, how they've helped you overcome them, or in Dr. Mazlan's case, to seek out additional challenges. I'm happy for anyone to go first. Let's head back to Mel. Mel, if you're ready.
Yep, I'm ready.
Raring to go. Over to you, Mel.
All right. What are the biggest challenges? All right. I started at 17 working as a promoter. All right. At the supermarket, you see me selling Pocky Sticks. There I am. And then I got promoted within a month to event supervisor. And really quickly, I gotten an opportunity to become a host. And then how does this modeling thing happen? I was actually scouted in the supermarket when I was doing a hosting gig with 3M, the brand 3M. All right. So to me, when I got scouted, modeling, what is modeling? You see, I was wearing a t-shirt and jeans with a messy hair bun. You see, and she approached me. She was just like, hey, do you want to join the next Miss Universe Malaysia 2019? And I was like, what? I didn't expect that, with the messy look. And I was on the microphone. So basically I was literally selling things in the supermarket. So the first challenges that I really remember was when I entered the modeling industry. It was a culture shock to me, because I was so used to being so loud and, this modeling thing there's just like an edge to it. You see models, they're all really poised, they don't really talk so much. So when I entered the modeling industry, it was like everyone was like, why is she talking so much? But that's me. I am loud in general. You see, my energy is there. It's always vibrant. So back to the character strength. Yeah, it matches, because I'm a born leader. Almost since young, when I was doing projects in school, I almost lead everything. I was during my SPM year, not to brag or anything, I was holding 7 top positions in school while doing SPM. And I got a sports scholarship because of that. So naturally, I was like, all right, I can do it. But then I broke down. I couldn't do it because it was so hard to walk in heels. Girls, if you know the pain that you're walking in the heels. And for me, I'm 176, so I'm pretty tall. I'm 5'9". Walking in 5 inches heels are the hardest thing I ever did. I'd rather stand every day in the supermarket for 12 hours. I'd rather do that. So I cried, I really cried. And I even got scolded by one of the supermodels in the industry, Mama Tini. Everyone knows her in the industry. And I remember that time she looked at me and she said, "You have a beautiful face, you have a good height, you have a great body, but if you can't walk, nobody's going to hire you." So I was like pretty disappointed in myself, where that's the point in my mind was like, I'm going to show to you. I'm going to prove to you that I can do this. I will nail the stage. And about 2 months later, I got an opportunity to represent Malaysia to the Philippines. And that really proves it. You see, I'm new, but within less than 2 or 3 months, I was already representing Malaysia to the international stage. So that really proves to her that, hey, you see, I'm doing well. And when I came back from the Philippines, what happened was I bumped into her for a casting. And she was like, "I remember you, you're the girl who cried." And you see, mental health, everyone, when people think of mental health, you stress, you think of, when people think of guys, they don't cry. And when people look at me, they think, oh, Melisha doesn't cry. But you see, I'm a very emotional person. When I'm stressed, I break down, I pick myself up, and I move on with life. That's how I am since the age of 17, because I have no other options to self-fund myself. So when I met her that day, she was like, "Okay, show me your walk." And I got hired straight away. She said, you are a totally different person from 3 months ago when I met you. And yeah, that was the biggest challenge that I remembered. And it's still like it's still in the back of my mind.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Mel. I picked up on, themes of leadership, and rather than go with the flow, you've essentially just, being your own trailblazer almost. You've had the conviction and the courage to pursue what it is that you really wanted. So I would think even as far as to apply that leadership, not to the people, not necessarily just the people around you, but to yourself as well, to lead yourself to where you want to go and where you want to be.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Mel.
Thank you.
All right. Jeremy, over to you. Biggest challenges, how have your strengths played a role in that?
Yep. Hard to talk, Melissa. Melissa, sorry. But yeah, I just wanted to share some similarity. I started working at 17, just like her, similarly in like being promoters and all. But unfortunately, I didn't get hitch hunt to be a Mr. Universe or whatnot, right? So yeah, I ran out of luck in that department. Not that tall, but
also talent scout, I would have.
Yeah. I'll try right now. Just joking. But yeah, I think I kind of resonate with Melissa in the sense that it takes a lot. You grew up really fast if you start working at such a young age, and I do agree, Melissa. Standing 12 hours in shopping malls, promoting stuff is not as easy as it seems, right? Money was slightly better, was slightly good, depending on what role you get. But the responsibility that you've got to assume while the rest of your peers are busy studying for SPM, planning what course to get when they finish their school, right? I think for both of us, it was, or rather for me, it was more about how do I fund myself to universities, right? Either through scholarship. If you don't get a scholarship, that's how you end things. So I wouldn't go into the details of my personal life, which I always talk to my close friends as my biggest challenges. But what I would resemble most of it is that it's always going against the odd. So a lot of times when I made my decision, it was something that it was unexpected of. I wouldn't say I specifically was a risk seeker, but it so happens that decisions that I make require certain risks to be made. So when facing challenges like this, I think one of the things that you've got to approach a situation is with authenticity, right? With authenticity, humility, as well as a lot of perseverance. So I've been through a lot in my life, more so personal than corporate. And a lot of times I didn't get through it alone. More than not, you learn to seek help. And I think with the Malaysian context, it's always so hard for us to ask for help, right? I'm not sure what's with the Asian culture, but it's always so hard for us to just say, hey, can you just help me? It's not always about the monetary bit. So I stayed with, I think one thing, maybe I could just share, when I was younger, one thing that I really wanted the most was to have, for my family to be really rich, and I have multiple houses to go about. So at the age of 17 or 18, I actually got that dream, right? So at one point in my life, I actually had 4 sets of different houses, to 4 sets of different houses, but those are not my houses. Those are my houses of my friends, my cousins, my aunties who had to harbor me throughout. And I thought those were one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. And once and of course back then, if you 12, 13 years back, if you told me about that, I would tell you that it's impossible for me to go through. I would break down almost every other couple of weeks. It was just so tough doing it alone. But once you pass through all these life lessons or challenges, everything now seems relatively easier. Not easy, but just way easier, right? Yeah. So my key takeaway would always be, like I say, authenticity or honesty in this sense, and kindness goes a long way. And now, whoever that asks for my help, I would definitely help them out because I was in that spot once, right? Yeah.
That's great, Jeremy. That was moving, and you mentioned kindness as your strength just a while ago, but I also picked up on you mentioning humility and perseverance as well. And certainly, when we say experience is a great teacher, I think that's only one part of the equation. I don't think it's experience per se that teaches us, but reflecting upon our experiences. And you've just gotten a comment there from Amanda Williams, who says, "To everyone, that was very inspiring, Jeremy." So I'm gonna clap to that, and certainly we've learned very much from your experiences. But my biggest takeaway from your experience that I'm feeling inspired right now is that despite all of that, right, your convictions have pushed you through, and you've still decided courageously to be kind through it all. Right, so keep it up, Jeremy. We are behind you 100% on this. Right.
Thank you.
Right, and Dr. Mazlan, over to you. How have your strengths? You mentioned, and I remember earlier strengths very different from the strengths that you have right now. So over to you.
Okay, so you're talking about the biggest challenges that I had in trying to accomplish, finish those projects that I had established. And okay, I said that I was a risk seeker in a sense that I was always looking for things that were different to do. If it was something someone else was doing, I wanted no part of it. And especially if I thought somebody else was doing it better than I was, then I definitely didn't have to go down that path. So somehow, even when I was young, I not only was I curious, I think that was a very large part of why I was looking at the world differently, but I always wanted to do things that were different. And of course, with that came the risk-seeking, risk-taking sort of characteristics. But so my challenges then were that everything I put in place was new. So I, all the time, I had to break rules, even those set by the government. And so I had to tell the government, no, if you want to do this, we'll have to break those rules, or go around those rules. And so I think I needed a fair bit of persuasiveness to tell people it's okay to go down this path, and persuasiveness in getting people, yes, to okay my breaking the rules, but to have people with me, knowing that they're also taking risks with me. That is important. But we look at me when I was young, there was a certain recklessness about me wanting to do things, doing things that are different. And it was just not good enough to be good in Malaysia. I had to see where we were internationally, especially internationally. So I'm saying all this because I think I come from a different perspective from the other two tonight. But persistence is very important, having a sense of being persuasive. But you can only be persuasive if you truly, and there was the word authentic just now, you are authentic about what you believe in. Otherwise, nobody is going to, think that will follow you. You yourself have to be, when I was in Harvard, they call it an authentic leader. If you're not an authentic leader, nobody will come with you. Of course, they will not trust you in the beginning because, as people say, leading them down the garden path. But after a while, they learn to trust you. And once they trust you, they are there with you. And trust can only come mutually. And if, as I said again, I will say it again, if you have that authenticity about you. And that, I think, would be the important ingredients if you are going to, like me, establish something very different, never been there before, and takes too many things, a lot of resources. And so it's very, very important that you also feel, you realize this. And you have to think about, once you decide on a course, you must be confident. Do not look back. And that's what I would say to young people. Okay, you want to take risks, take it, but don't look back. Just move forward and be confident, and strategize accordingly. That was how I overcame my challenges.
And certainly you've displayed so much of that, Dr. Mazlan. You mentioned zest, in the early stages of your career, and then to go boldly, if I can use this, the line from Star Trek, to go boldly when no man has gone before, isn't it? So just really in fitting with the theme of your profession and your accomplishments, I think then the reward would seem like, you have a view of the heavens, and I think that is just amazing.
You know what? The rewards are, I cannot thank God enough for the rewards that I have. Every day I'm grateful for everything He's given me. And I keep telling to myself, there's really nothing else I want in my life right now. I don't desire anything, but only to give back to people around me, to society, to my country, and of course to the world. It's payback time.
And certainly you have already done so much of that, Dr. Mazlan. Thank you so much on behalf of everyone here, on behalf of everyone in the country. And what I'm picking up from all three of our guest panels' experiences is that they're all trailblazers. They have the courage, they have the conviction, and certainly they've relied on their strengths to go when no one has gone before. And certainly initially, they might have been faced with challenges. I think when you go against the grain, certainly you'll be faced with challenges, but along with the challenges as well, opportunities, right? To be the first, to be the notable person, the trailblazer in whichever line of work that you choose to dedicate your passions and your interests to. All right, so folks, we're gonna transition our next conversation, our next question here right now into something that fits with the theme of our webinar today, and that is on mental health. And a question I'd just like to ask everyone here today is, can our strengths, this recognition of what we're uniquely good at, our values, our virtues, can our strengths, recognition and using our strengths, can that help us on a path towards better mental health? If so, we'd certainly like to have a few ideas on how that can be done. So back over to Mel to share her views on this.
Okay, back to me. Wow, that was quite inspiring actually from Jeremy and of course Professor Mazlan. As a youth myself, I believe that certain strengths that we have can definitely help us towards a better mental health. For example, like me, let's use my other strengths that I have other than the top three. Let's use, okay. Oh, wow. Gratitude, judgment, it's pretty low. I remember, Dr. Eugene, you have your love bar pretty low, right? It's like 24. But I think in general, it helps to sort out emotions in you. Yeah. So when you have a certain strength, when you notice you have certain strengths, it helps you sort out the emotions that you're feeling daily. For example, it helps me to understand, all right, for example, my first top one, it's perspective, all right? I don't like something, all right? That's my first perspective. That's my first judgment. But I'm also looking at another person's point of view of it. So I'm trying to understand, oh, okay, that person is not liking me because of this reason. So it helps me to understand why that person doesn't like me. So from there, I can actually process my thoughts and like truly understand how it could help me and make my emotions better. Because otherwise we are going to project it to everyone. that is what happens with youth nowadays, I believe. We are all here, we are teenagers, especially in an Asian household. There's so much anger. We are not given love all the time. And that's really sad, actually. But if our parents truly knew how to foster our character strengths, how to develop it, don't you think that all of us here would be full of love? So you see, that's kind of funny. But then when you know you have certain strengths, that is why now, I'm going back and I'm thinking like, you know what, maybe my mom didn't give me so much love. Maybe it's my turn to give it to her instead. Make her understand. We are all here. You guys gonna agree with me. Asian households are like that. I have shared a lot with my other friends or people younger than me, juniors coming to me, because I used to give talks in school with brands. And I have kids among like 13 to 17 coming to me like, I'm so stressed out. I'm like, what are you stressed out about? I'm so stressed that my mom is pushing me. I'm like, you're 13. Why are you so stressed out? But the thing is, parents nowadays only care about academic. And you see, when you focus too much on academic and you neglect your child's emotions, their mental health is going to fall. And that is why the suicide cases in Malaysia is so high, especially among kids or among teenagers. So if we all develop our strengths properly, we get to sort out emotions, we understand what our parents do. There's certain understanding with our parents. And I hope that our parents explain to us, if they explain to us, okay, I know this is how you're feeling. I still need to punish you because you did something wrong. So this give and take. So I hope that all the younger, same age with me next time, we can be better parents. We really care about our kids' emotion, and help them with their better mental health. Yeah, that's all.
Now, thanks so much for sharing that. I really like the reference to the Asian household because, I think love and affection are expressed a little bit differently here in South of the world, in contrast to what we often see on American television. But I take your point. I think you've just made a very important statement about, your strength and that's perspective. And along with that as well, I saw that you were relating, you're stressing the need to empathize, to recognize each other's emotions, to know what the other person, how the other person is thinking, but also acknowledging how they feel. So I think that's an important takeaway. I think the world would certainly be a lot kinder if we just learned how to take another person's perspective, and if we saw the world through another person's eyes, right? And to acknowledge that, what, we have different ways of looking at the world. There's no reason to be at each other's throats. All right, Jeremy, over to you. For mental health, strengths for mental health, what are your thoughts?
All right, cool. Yeah, just to put it on things on record, right? My parents doesn't force me to. My parents doesn't force me to study, Just to put it on record, I was just born very. I was just born very kiasu. Everybody knows what's kiasu, right? So yeah, so I just want to take a little bit twist into this question. Rather than the key strengths, I just want to highlight a little bit on our lesser strengths. All right. So I think one thing that most of us could do, or I wish that my peers or my school would have taught me when I was younger, would have been to understand to acknowledge what you're not good at and to actually accept it, right? I don't know about you guys. When I was younger, I think the co-curriculum still stays the same. Is that we are all benchmarked through a single test, right? Through 4 tests a year, and then through your major tests throughout your lifetime in 17. And I recall waiting for my SPM result. I did pass with flying colors, and but the idea was that the idea back then was, I remember that morning I didn't want to take the result, simply because I thought if I take it, if I fail, that means that's just the end of my life, right? Not my life in literally, but that's the end of my academic life, or I can go universities and colleges, right? But if you look at the Americans or the Europeans, right, just because you're not good at studies, there are a lot of other things that you can do, and that's not how they stop it there, right? They provide you a lot of different avenues. And while I was couch surfing about 5 to 6 years ago, I met with my host, and I started talking to him, and he says that, oh, you know what, I did a technical school, in Germany, and I was quite curious, right? So I asked him like, what's technical school? He said, oh, that's where I learned how to. I didn't have formal education. I learned a lot of very hands-off stuff, becoming an engineer, and he became an engineer for BMW, and I was pretty shocked, right? Nothing ever happens back then in Malaysia like this, and that's because every parents out there, I do understand that their intention is good, force their kids to score A's in their universities. And that's also how we actually rank our kids these days anyway. If you do not get full A, you are not qualified to go to colleges or universities. And I think, and it sends a lot of impact to people as these children grows up to become workers or to become a parent themselves. So you start thinking that, if you lose out in one part of your life, you lose out in every part of your life. So for me, it's about also recognizing our lesser strengths. It's okay, right? Like, I think one thing that I've always talked about is I do not show gratitude as much as I would like to. Don't get me wrong, my project is all about gratitude. That's how I thought I would compensate that, is to just go in and understand the science behind gratitude. And it helped me along the way. I know it sounds like a hypocrite, but along the way, I understand what's it like to actually show gratitude towards not things that you have, but things that is already there. All right, and you don't necessarily need to have more in your life, but just to appreciate whatever that's there. Yeah. Thanks.
Jeremy, thanks so much for sharing that. That was, if I could just summarize that into a single word, for me, that sounded very wholesome, right? So that was recognition of what you already have, and also acceptance that, you know what, you may not necessarily be good at this particular subject, right? Just to narrow it down, but certainly recognition that your worth, your value as an individual extends beyond just a minimal dimension, a very small and narrow dimension. In this case, it's academics. I think we can all resonate with the competitiveness and the strong focus on academic achievements and results. A lot of us here in this country. But I think to broaden it out and to tell our youth as well that your worth is not based on your report card, I think that can be very, very uplifting and be very empowering as well. For people who think otherwise, for youths who think that their worth, right, as an individual is dependent on the grades that they have on the exam. So thank you so much for sharing that. A little bit teary-eyed there, I think. Dr. Mazlan, over to you for lessons on how we can make strengths work for us for the benefit of our mental health. Mike. There we go. Don't worry.
Okay.
We all do.
I'll be very brief because our time is running out. I'll echo Jeremy's statements, and I would say that now that I'm wiser, the one thing that will give you mental strength is to practice gratitude. To be thankful for what you have. At the end of the day, I think that's what you have to think about. I won't go into details, but there's also, to me, to have a sense of humility that you didn't do it by yourself, that all of this came to you as an inspiration or aspiration from your colleagues, and that humility that you did not do it by yourself. And the third would be, I'm an eternal optimist. Of course, as an astronomer, and this is a long story, we are eternal optimists. We don't care. We wait for hours for the skies to clear, for instance. But in terms of life lessons, to keep me calm and accept things that I cannot change, for instance, is that gratitude, humility, and a lot of hope.
That is, in essence, how you put positive psychology into practice. I think you've just summed it up so nicely for us, Dr. Mazlan, right? So again, like I said, you could be here for an entire night just to talk about all these concepts and, to extend on your experiences. I'm being mindful of the time here. So maybe what we'll do is go around and still with you, Dr. Mazlan, some words of wisdom, some key takeaway messages that you could leave us with from today's webinar. Dr. Mazlan, the microphone. Yep, thanks.
I think I already said what will be my key, what I want to express as key takeaways in terms of mental health and mental well-being. As I said, gratitude, humility, and lots of hope, regardless of what's happening politically or whatever. Let's give ourselves a lot of hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mazlan. We've gotten a few messages come true from the chat as well, seeing that that was indeed very inspiring. Thank you. Jeremy, words of wisdom.
Yeah, I think we covered quite a broad range of positive attitudes today. So I'm just going to do a very quick takeaway, which is something that I thought someone would have, I was hoping that someone would have told me back then, about 12 to 13 years ago, when I was, with the same age as the crowd, which is basically be yourself. I know it sounds really cliche, really something out of the movies, out of books that you read, but looking back, if I didn't really enjoy my life because it was always so restricted to society's norm. But try your best to be yourself, and please don't expect something, just because we talk about it today and tomorrow you're just like, aha, I'm this person that's going to set me for the next 40, 50 years, right? Being yourself means that you're comfortable at a point of time, and you just got to let it flow and change along the way. And yeah, because nothing is more how do you call it, nothing is more powerful when you start learning to accept yourself and to play to your strengths.
I think there was a song in that, Jeremy. So if you're a songwriter, you would probably just write out lyrics to that one. It sounds like a song. I think it would be a very nice tune to it. Look, I agree completely. Authenticity, fitting in with where you are in your life, and knowing to adjust and adapt as well, and recognizing that your strengths, as with say Dr. Mazlan's experience, right, may be very different one time in your life with that in a later part of your life. Right. And we start off with Mel. Let's finish up with Mel. Mel, back to you. Words of wisdom.
All right, thank you. I would say it's okay to not be okay. It might sound like, meh, but it's very true. You're not alone. It's okay to seek help if you need to. You see, mental health in Malaysia, it's very like, everyone thinks like, nah, it's just stress. They just push it aside. But if you look at it, from your heart, you know that you're facing issues that you can't fix. You need a therapist. Go and seek help. And it's okay. No one judges you. I know some people might, but you see, if you seek help and you don't end your life, just remember why you didn't end your life the other day. And when you want to do it again, just remember again. So that's what I always tell my, I always advocate about mental health in my Instagram since like 2 years ago. I always say that it's okay to not be okay. You're not alone. Just seek help if you need to. Yeah.
We're very grateful. Someone who has a strength in leadership, social intelligence, to pave the way for us and to be the voice for mental health advocacy in this country. And Amanda Williams says that's really true. Mental health is often dismissed and put in the stress box. So, the work that you're doing is meaningful and important, and also in fitting with the theme of today's session, it aligns with the strengths that you have. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Mel. Okay, so again, in the interest of time, I think I'll have to pass the time back. We were having such a great time discussing. But again, in the interest of time, I'm just going to pass the session back to Rachel and to Mark, I believe.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Eugene. And thank you so much, Professor Mazlan, Melisha, Jeremy. Those were great insights. And I think the audience really, really resonated with what you've all shared. And they really found it inspiring and encouraging as well. So thank you, all of you. And of course, now we want to hear from all of you as well, from the audience. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to direct them to our speakers, because now we're moving into the Q&A session. So the floor is yours. And again, if you want to share your own experience as well of how you've used your strengths to improve your well-being or to achieve your own goals, we'd love to hear them as well. So you may do so by unmuting your mics or type it in the chat. And in fact, we have a question from our audience in the chat already. So Anthony asked, can a person operating from their strengths unknowingly undermine their mental health, like taking self-leadership to narcissism? So any of the speakers, you may Feel free to answer it.
That's a great question, by the way, Anthony.
Is it okay if I give like a random input?
Go ahead, Macy.
Okay.
Yes.
I actually really resonate with what Anthony has said. So, for example, one of my key strengths is kindness. And I think that sometimes I run myself thin by being extra kind and just like being helpful towards other people. And it sometimes does deteriorate my own mental health as well. And I think that if I were to answer this question, like how do I able to overcome it, is that to use one of my weaker strength, if that makes sense. It's like using your weaker strength to help your stronger strength. So one of my weaker strengths is gratitude. So I think that maybe I need to be grateful that this is how much I'm able to do, and I don't need to do more than what I should. It's like a bit of a different perspective, but does anyone has any different opinions?
Okay, agree, Lily. Mark, yeah.
Yeah, great question, Anthony. And Macy, I think that's a really good perspective. I think one thing to bear in mind with the strengths approach is it's really a counterpart to the struggles approach. So rather than focusing on our deficits and our weaknesses, it's a way of really emphasizing the strengths. So even if your lower qualities, your lower characteristics, they're still seen as lesser strengths. So, but this idea that maybe you have such a constellation of strengths that are mobilized in the service of things that aren't very healthy, surely that's a risk. And you have to consider some of the other mental health concerns or risks as a counterpart, along with these strengths. I think what we should emphasize about the strengths is that, and as our speakers have been saying, giving examples, if we're authentic about who we are, and if in that way we actually can recognize our strengths, and if we can use them in our lives, it's been shown, and there's really good empirical scientific evidence to show that. Not only does it make us better at getting stuff done and make us more productive, but it actually does improve our mental health. So this is not squarely answering Anthony's question, and certainly that's a messy area, and we have to consider other facets of mental health. But in terms of bolstering us against risk of mental health, a really good example, a classic study when this was first being geared around 15 years ago. So Seligman and his colleagues, they had people just over 1 week, every day over 1 week, use one of their strengths in a novel way, every day, a different way. And for one, that's a very, very simple intervention. And compared to a group that didn't do this, a placebo control group who were just asked to write down some memories from their earlier lives, at the end of it, they had significantly lower levels of depression symptoms. And 6 months later, they had significantly lower levels of depression symptoms. So the strengths approach certainly can offset some of the risks around mental health. I just wanted to underline that. But definitely when it comes to risks of not attending to things that might put you in a more vulnerable state, then you have to take that into consideration too.
Can I take a crack at this?
Please do.
Please do.
Yeah, I think one thing that maybe I would just try to answer Anthony directly would be about practicing balance. So like one of my key strengths would be leadership, right? But even in the corporate world, you don't see me just jumping around just to be the leader of all projects. That would just drive me nuts, right? I don't think anyone in their sane mind would just pick up 20, 30 projects and to complete it over 1 week. So yeah, sometimes doing too much to your strengths doesn't mean that it's a good thing. Saying too much of something is bad enough. That's a song, right? Yeah, there's a truth in that as well. But yeah, so the key is about playing balance, and also to interpret things very differently, right? So for example, having the skill set of leadership on top of my list is also understanding that being a leader means that you lead. At the same time, you need to learn to take a back seat as well. So there are times that there's going to be people who are much more qualified than you to do things. But just because you have a leadership trait on top of the list doesn't mean you have to, just raise up your hand and go beyond them. Yeah, maybe. So for me, it's about having balance, I guess.
I agree. It's an underlying principle in positive psychology, the golden mean. So excellent question there, Anthony. I think strengths, if you use them in excess, there is actually a table, if you like, and can share with you. Using your strengths, in excess, that can also be detrimental to yourself and the people around you. I'm not sure if there are studies that show that the excessive use of strengths leads to mental health issues, but it certainly will lead to less than optimal outcomes. So excessive use of humor, inappropriate use of humor, for instance, I think the excess of it is called buffoonery. So a very colorful word there, but yeah, if you use humor, if you see, crack inappropriate jokes, use humor to, to sort of insult people and offend people, and certainly that's not a good way of putting your strength of humor to good use or to healthy use. Right, we have a
Right,
couple
thank
more
you.
questions coming through.
Thank you so much for all the input. We're running short on time, so we'll have a couple more questions. So please do bear with us, and we're really, really happy to have all these great questions coming in. But before that, we want to thank you, Professor Mazlan, for sparing her time with us and just sharing her story with us this evening. We're really, really inspired. And she will have to make a move shortly. So thank you so much again, Professor Mazlan. Take care, and we'll see you soon, right? So we have a question from uh, Agita. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but if I'm wrong, please forgive me. So this question is for Dr. Eugene. I noticed that most, if not all, of the strengths from the guest speakers involve leadership. I can understand how this strength is obviously the most beneficial in life, especially career-wise, but does everyone have to actively cultivate that strength when it doesn't resonate with them or if they still wish to be successful in life?
So I think maybe we'll answer this question. And thank you so much, Gathia, for that question. Certainly a challenging question. I can't at the moment think of a condition or a situation where you wouldn't want to cultivate a strength if it is your signature strength. Now, we acknowledge that the strengths can change over time. So what might have been useful, what might have been your go-to strength in one phase in your life might be a little bit different from, a different phase in your life or different time in your life, right? It's not a necessity to say that this is your top strength, therefore you only hone it. I think we heard from our speakers here as well. Jeremy, for instance, strength also in kindness, which is also another one of his top strengths. And then we heard from Dr. Mazlan just a while ago as well. Earlier on, it was zest that really propelled her to seek out challenges. We've heard from Mel, who talked about social intelligence, right, and how she actually paired it with perspective, and that actually helped her with empathizing. So maybe the simple sort of answer to the question I can give is that I think we have a constellation or a cluster of different strengths that we can use in a complementary manner to help us in different stages and different times in our lives. So, but I would still hold to the suggestion that it's best to be authentic and true to yourself. I think a lot of us are surprised that, hey, we didn't get the results for this strength survey that we thought we would get, right? But I think just having to think about it, why you think that was your result, and finding some way to make that work for you. Certainly using constellation or combination of your strengths would be beneficial. Mark, you've unmuted, Mike.
Yeah, just to address Agatha's question. So I think if you're asking as well, because all of our guests have been, their strengths, as you said, are prominently leadership. But many of us don't have leadership as a strength, and I'm among those. And I think that's just, absolutely, we can't all be leaders, right? It would be chaos and too competitive. So yeah, definitely everyone's strengths are going to be different. And if you look at the way that they map onto the 6 virtues, it's quite a nice way to get a good sense of kind of what your general orientation might be. So yeah, some of us are completely, your lower strengths might be there. And I think a question that stems from that is, what should you try and nurture or bolster your lesser strengths, or should you really put all of your attention into your character strengths? That's huge. Dr. Eugene, could you address that?
The general view, I think, from the literature is that if you were to choose between one or the other, it's to leverage on the strengths that you do have, but also in recognition that the strengths that you don't use very often, they are not weaknesses per se. Right. So I mean, there are different ways to actually argue this. You could probably have a debate with 3 psychologists, 3 positive psychologists. I'll argue for one and 3 that argue for the other. But I'm of the opinion that, you have those innate strengths, those virtues that come naturally to you. And I think with that naturalness, I think comes that sense of authenticity as well.
Correct answer.
And I think Dato Bindi puts it nicely as well. Leadership does not necessarily mean that you have to take a lead role in public, but it also means that you can lead your life to make a positive change. I think that's a great Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. We have another question, and this is open to Jeremy and Melisha. So, this question comes from Amanda. Have any of the speakers dealt with imposter syndrome? If so, how did you overcome it?
My answer to you, it's every day. Would that help? Um, I think it's something that I'll just put it very simply. I don't have the right answer to this, and I think both Mark and Eugene may have the more right answer to things. So if you ask the question, if you ask me the question personally, I'll tell you every day I have it. Even attending this course, no, sorry, even attending this webinar and giving a talk, it's really tough for me. Because it's not that you do not have the technical knowledge or the know-how, or you can't speak or write, but it's just that you do, and you do not have the confidence for it. And confidence, like many other things, it's not something that you can build overnight. And these are the things that that you got to acknowledge. Like I said, acknowledge it. So if you look at me like couple of months back, I wouldn't take on any webinar because I thought that it's something that I can't do. I have a fear of speaking to a lot of people that I can't see because I tend to move around. If anyone has been noticing, I constantly move around my body. I can't sit still. And the way to address any of your imposter syndrome is always to just take the first step and try it out, right? Take it small. You can do a big show, you can do a small show, you can just do with your family members. Just try it out, something that you always thought that you can't do. So, for example, with me, it's basically to have a very small session with my friends to just talk about things through Zoom, right? To start using conference calls through Zoom and just slowly get used to it. And once you're used to it, and then it's about how do you harness it? How do you hone the skills, right? How do you become better? Then the next question is, would this go away? The answer is probably yes and probably no. In my case, it's a no-go for me. I still started when I see you guys. I still feel much more. I still feel really, a bit more stressed when I had to talk to you guys. Because right now on my screen, there's about probably, let's say 2, 4, 5. There's about 20 people. Sorry, there's about 20 people on one screen that's staring back and I can't see. And I'm not sure who should I focus with. All right. Yeah. So I know I didn't really answer your questions, but my answer will be a short answer will be yes, I still do have it, and how I overcome it is to continuously practice it. Will it go away in the future? Probably not. Yeah, but does practicing makes it easier every other time? Yes, it does get better.
Right. So if I could summarize it, is to practice it and face it head on, right?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Melisha, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, to add on to Jeremy, I do agree with him. Like, you really got to practice. I have it as well. I think it comes to people that really wants to achieve something in their life. When you really, really want it, you see, you develop this kind of syndromes. And yeah, same with Jeremy. I was very worried about this webinar actually. Talking to people about mental health, which I'm a marketing student. If you ask me anything about marketing, maybe I could answer well. But when it comes to mental health, you see, this is not my area of specialty. So I practice. I read more about character strength. I really try to understand it. So I realized this thing with me. How do I overcome it? Not overcome it entirely, but just to make me feel a little bit less anxious, I just study it. So when I know what I'm talking about, I feel calmer. So that's how. So I totally agree with Jeremy. You got to practice, kind of like the line, you fake it until you make it. Yeah, you kind of have to do that sometimes in general.
All right.
I think it's reassuring, Amanda, that the only people who don't experience imposter syndrome are imposters.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dr. Eugene. And great points from Jeremy and Melisha as well. And we hope that that has helped you. If for those of you who have a similar question or if you face a similar thing, we hope that this will be helpful for you. Now, because we're short on time, unfortunately, that will be our last question, and we will wrap up here. We apologize for the spillover, and once again, awesome takeaways, great points from all our speakers, and great questions from all of you as well, from the audiences. If you do have any questions that you still like to direct them to, feel free to reach out to us on My Mind on Film, and we can help you direct them to our speakers or to anyone in the committee, and hopefully we'll be able to help you out as well. So once again, thank you so much, all of our guests, Professor Mazlan, Dr. Eugene, Jeremy, and Melisha, for all the wonderful pointers that were shared. And hopefully this will be helpful for our own lives as well. And of course, thank you to all our participants for joining us today. We really appreciate your presence here with us. And we truly, truly hope that you enjoyed this session as well. And we hope that these takeaways will help you. And we hope you'll be able to share this with your family and your friends as well. Right? So if you'd like to know more about mental health and these topics in general, we have more webinars coming up. And in fact, our latest one coming up soon is My Mental Health, How to Take Care of It. And I will hand over this time to Salah, which is another member of our organizing committee of My Mind on Film, to talk a little bit more about this upcoming webinar. So Salah, over to you.
Hello, everybody. I'll keep it short in the interest of time. It's been like, I can't really express how inspiring and lovely this conversation's been so far. It's been really great. We've been really had a good panel of guests here. So in light of the current situation that we are in, we know that it's not easy times right now, and it's important to sustain a good health, especially mentally. But taking mental care is not really like about repairing what's gone wrong. As a matter of fact, prevention works way better. It saves you a lot of headaches and a lot of unnecessary pain. And alongside with that, there are also ways to optimize the positivity of your current experiences and the way that you're living your life. Probably you're happy with it, but you want to take a step further and improve the quality of your current life. So there's a lot of other things that that's going on with the way we can take care of ourselves mentally that the mainstream that isn't really aware of. The moment we hear mental health, we imagine like a room with a counselor or like a therapist talking about our issues, but it's not all about our issues. It can be just like today that we have a very good conversation on strengths. You can like approach a counselor on how to use those strengths, and how to optimize the level of functionality within your everyday life. So to hear that and way more on this topic and how to take care mentally of ourselves, I welcome you all to join us on our next webinar, which is happening, as Rachel just mentioned, 7th November, 10:30 a.m. I'll hope to see you all and even more people over there. It's been a great audience and a great experience here. So have a good night, y'all.
Thank you so much, Salah. And yes, we hope to see all of you there. And thank you so much, all of you. This marks the end of our webinar for today. We're so grateful for all your questions and all your pointers. And again, if you do have any questions that you still like to, if you still have for our speakers, feel free to direct them to our website or our social media pages, all right? So stay tuned on our social media pages for more updates and our website for more information. If there are no further questions or concerns, you may leave this call. Take care, all of you, and see you soon. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night, guys. Take care.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Mel. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Rachel, Macy,
Thank
Salah.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
See you all again soon.
Yeah, take care.